Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. There's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard. There's a lot of things that can tear you apart.
Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And I do apologize about the sound. I was busy typing in the side chat, so I turned my sound off. But here I am, back again. Now, before I introduce the topic, we are going to be auctioning a magnificent painting for charity. And I see Erica is here, so Erica, if you could please look after promoting it in the side chat, and also if you could just keep a record of the bids, that'd be fantastic. Okay, let me show you the painting. The painting is number 1 of the series Breathe South Africa, and this is called Sea. The dimensions are A1 size, 84 centimeters by 59 centimeters. Material is textured oil on stretched canvas, and the starting bid is 10,000 Rand. So your bid has got to be over 10,000 Rand to get into the auction. The artist is Erica Landry, who's here with us tonight, and all proceeds go to the Farmers Aid South Africa charity, which raises food parcels and funds for the poor. Okay, now let's get on to the topic at hand tonight, and that is to do with the Coffin case. Elsa B. Join and Marius Kutsu will be joining us tonight. They are intimately aware of all the details behind the infamous Coffin case, which ranks right up there with what happened to Vicky Momberg, Penny Sparrow, and so many other whites in South Africa when it comes to a racially biased judicial system. Let me show you some photos from the actual case. Here we go. I'll just get those up. This is the judge in the case, Judge Mfalelele, and here are the 2 young men who were central to the Coffin case, and on the side there you can see one of our guests here tonight, which is Elsa B. And this is the fellow who was put in the coffin, Victor. We'll be hearing more about him tonight. And finally, we have got a photo of the 2 young white men who were involved in the case, and there's Marius, who you'll be meeting tonight. Okay, let's get back to the story. Right, just got to get those all out of the way. Now, okay, central to our discussion tonight will be the infamous Coffin case, which resulted in two innocent men, Willem Oosthuyzen and Theo Jackson, being incarcerated for years. Here is a video they took of the thief who they tried to intimidate by putting him in a coffin. They took the video to prove that they did not hurt the man, who they then released. 2 months later, the video I will show you now, being the video taken at the time, went viral on the internet, and from there on, the lives of these two young white men changed dramatically for the worst. Here we go, let me show you the video.
Gaan jy nou weer stil? Nou, hoekom stil jy? Maar ek klim binnekant, ek kan nie hoor wat jy sê. Wie sê kabel is daar? As jy nie van jou toe maak, dat ek sommer nie thuis opsê.
Dit is die laaste keer dat ek praat van Dit kan kies of ek sluit jou maar of ek sit voor praat met dit.
Wil jy vanaf doodgaan of stadig? Klip, jy praat klip. Jy wil ons praat. Net. Ja. Voor in die brak is 'n luite. Maak sit in jou kop. Kop. Sit in jou kop. Kop. Hey, kop. Klap. Vamos. Jy kan chonchamos. Nyang chonchamos. Kiwet. Ja. Nee. Por não chonchamos. Não, suculala, cos nem pulali passamos. Que na parada. As tigres só. Que na parada.
Ja, moes ons so groot.
Hi Elsie, hi Marius, good to have you with us.
Hi Scott.
Good evening. Good morning on your side.
It's 2:30 in the morning. Yeah, it certainly is. Now, you guys were involved in this infamous Coffin case from the very start, weren't you?
Yeah.
No.
The Coffin assault duo.
Not from the very start. Somebody else was in the beginning there. We took over and we ended the case, yeah.
Right, okay. But I mean, you know all the facts behind the case and what went on and the whole 100 yards or 99 yards. Let's start off with talking about the actual judicial system. I get so many people saying to me that the problem is actually getting something to go to trial, especially in the magistrates' court. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, it is. Because so many cases settle, you know, they put too many cases on the roll. If there's, say, for instance, 5 magistrates available, then they put 50 cases on the roll in the hope that most of them will settle at court. But
yeah, some settle beforehand. Many of them, maybe most, settle, say, on the morning of the court date, in the corridors, outside court, in the corridor, or I'd say that's about 25, say 30 or 50 cases settled. Then there's 20 cases that want to proceed towards trial or on trial, go on trial, and then there are only, say, 5 magistrates available, then the presiding magistrate that calls the roll advises the parties to talk it over in the corridor outside court and try to settle the matter, because there's not enough magistrates to have all 20 cases go on to trial. Then the first 5 cases that are called, that are ready to proceed, they go on trial. They each get a magistrate. The other 20 or so, or 15 cases, either have a sort of forced settlement, or they have to postpone. They have to remand.
So we can basically say that the judicial system in South Africa is broken, like everything
It's
else.
frustrating. It's definitely frustrating.
Well, I must tell you, Scott, that now during the COVID virus thing, lockdown, it was broken, completely. And now after the COVID virus thing, it's not back to where it was, and I don't think it's going to return to the previous normal anytime soon.
Right.
You have harrowing stories. It's not really stories, it's the truth. Some of my attorney colleagues tells of money that has to be paid to the security outside at the court's door at the entrance, to have the opportunity to get a case number or to enter the court building.
You have to bribe.
You have to bribe an official
Yeah, just get entrance to the court.
just to get in.
Just to get entrance to the court, you have to bribe someone.
Yeah.
You're joking.
Yeah.
Really?
Does this apply to everybody?
Well, it
Witnesses?
applies to the attorneys, the lawyers that do litigation matters.
That is
Well,
absolutely crazy. So,
Yeah,
Look, if you have a deceased estate matter, then you have to do a lot of paperwork and apply for an executor's letter and to the master of the High Court, and to get also a estate number for you to act as a trustee in winding up the deceased estate. Now, you will wait up to 8 months for a reply with the executor's letter authorizing you to proceed with the estate and the estate registered number. But if you pay $400 under the table, you can get that number within 3 days.
wow.
That letter.
So there's corruption right through the whole system. Now, let's get back to our primary case here, which is the Coffin case. What I'd like to hear about is, okay, we know that these two young men were involved in intimidating Victor and pushing him into a coffin.
yes.
What actually led up to that? What were the events that took place that actually caused them to do that?
Well, the people in the vicinity, the farmers in the vicinity, have a lot of instances of illegal trespassing on their property, theft of stock and produce, and there are also mines in the same area where the farms are situated, and the mines have a lot of problems with theft of cables.
Right.
And the cables then is burned or stripped from the plastic, and then the copper wire inside the cables are sold to places where
Scrap metal
places.
dealers, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also steal batteries from tractors. They steal diesel out of tractors. You know, the area, the Middelburg area, the main business in Middelburg is farming and mining, coal mines.
Right.
That supply coal to Eskom for electricity. So you get a mine next to a farm, and that mixture is causing a lot of crime.
Okay, because
Yeah.
the thieves go into the mining area to steal cable, for example, and then walk through
Yeah.
the farm on their way back to sell it.
That's right.
Okay, so
But they also steal the farm. It's squatter camps that supply the mines with workers.
right,
But the people that stay there, that don't work on the mine, steal in the area. But
Right.
everybody survives. Yeah.
okay. So what
But
happened
so-
on that day? With what was Victor doing when
Victor
Willem
was
saw him?
he was passing through Willem's farm. Willem
Right.
was in the fields, busy with the millies, and he saw this guy coming through the farm. And because they have a big problem, he already immediately suspected this guy. So he approached him, asked him what is he doing there. There was a sort of a quarrel, and then that guy started running. And
Yeah, the bag was in the...
yeah, he had a bag and he didn't want to tell Willem what's in the bag, and you know, the normal quarrel.
And then he ran away.
He ran away and he ran towards a railway line, and Willem followed him with his bakkie.
Yeah.
And he crossed the railway line, but Willem couldn't cross the railway line with the bakkie there
The
because
bakkie is a pickup, yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
pickup truck. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so he had to drive next to the railway line to a crossing and drive back. And he called Theo and he told Theo, listen, this guy just passed through my land. He's a suspect. He has a bag with him. I don't know what's going on. Just have a look out on your farm. And they both found him there on the farm where Theo was working.
Right.
So when they confronted him, they saw this stripped electrical cable
Copper wire.
cut in pieces
Right.
in a sports bag. Yeah. So they wanted to hand him over to the police, and then he started threatening them. He told them that when they are in the fields, their families are alone at home, you know where they stay, and he's going to kill their wives and their children. And when their crops are ripe, he's going to burn the fields. So that was a little bit upsetting. It's a reality in South Africa, that's why it's
Yeah.
upsetting.
Yeah.
Then they decided to teach him a lesson so that he...
Well, Victor also said, you can take me to the police, I will be out tomorrow.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. The police does nothing.
Yeah.
If you hand it to the guy, most of the times they don't even open a docket because the police ask you whose cable it is, and you say, no, I don't know. So there's no person to claim the cable or to lay the charge, so they just let the guy go, you know.
Yeah.
If the owner is not traced, then there's no case.
But the fact is that Victor threatened the farmers' families and also their crops. He said he would come and basically harm the children, harm the families, and burn their crops. So that was a very
He said he know where they live, and he know their routine. When they're away from home, he will go there and he will either burn them out or the family out or kill them.
Wow. Okay. So what happened then?
Okay, then Willem put him on the back of his bakkie, and Theo went to fetch the coffin, and they meet each other.
Well, they were discussing, what to do now. If they take him to the police, he will be out tomorrow. So that wouldn't solve the problem. So they were discussing what else can they do. And then I think Theo said, well,
No, Willem, actually.
my employer has this
No, Willem told Theo, your employer is bragging about putting people in the coffin. Does he still have that coffin? So Theo went to fetch the coffin, and Willem took Malotwa with him, and they met each other in a silage ditch.
Yeah.
Not far, it's on the same farm, just on the other side of the farm. Then Victor helped them to unload the coffin. They told him to get into the coffin.
Yeah.
Then you can see the video
Now,
where they stopped.
the reason they took that video was to show that they didn't hurt the guy. Isn't that correct?
Scott, afterwards, and that was for me a big issue in the court case. Victor Malotwa had no markings on him, not a drop of blood, no open wounds. He wasn't assaulted as you would expect in the normal way. Although he testified under oath in court that he was hit with a knopkierie, that stick with a huge
Bolt nut.
nut on the steel nut.
Right.
It's in the video. You can see it in the video.
Next to it lays on the ground next to the coffin.
Right.
He testified they hit him over the head and all over his body. When asked whether they hit you, he replied, all over my body. And if you look at that thing, it's a nut this size.
Right.
Of heavy steel. If you hit someone with that, there will be a lot of damage and blood and broken bones. You can kill someone if you hit him on the neck or head. Right. Victor had no indications of assault. No, not a single drop of blood, and not any open wounds. There is no open wounds, no cuts. And he even asked for a lift back to the main road afterwards.
Okay, Dalton Sitori, who saw him after the incident, and his mother that saw him after the incident, both testified they couldn't see that he was in any way assaulted.
Right, okay, so you had contrary evidence.
Yeah.
Yes.
His mother testified that when she asked him if, he said he was not feeling well, and when his mother asked him about that, he said he had a headache.
So,
she gave him two Panados, and he went and lay down and sleep for an hour or so.
But he didn't went to the doctor or to the hospital or to the police, anything. Yeah, he was traumatized, but he wasn't hurt.
So basically these two young white farmers intimidated this African guy because they saw he had been allegedly stealing cable, and they wanted to give him a lesson because he threatened their families and to burn their crops. So they did this to intimidate him.
Yeah, and don't forget the lack of the police, the lack of activity on the police side. If the police was trustworthy and that they would take such a case and handle it with serious intent, it would be a complete different outcome. But because these two young Boers guys know what happens at the police station, and because the Victor Malotwa was directed told them, I will be out tomorrow. I know that to be that is what is going to happen.
Well, it's very interesting that in South Africa, in the townships, there are more and more of mob justice where, if someone does something wrong, they don't bother with the police, they just take care of the person themselves. It's getting more and more like that all over South Africa.
Just point quickly, today, the Clicks franchise.
Yes.
It's a franchise throughout South Africa, Clicks. They asked for, they went to the High Court to ask for a court order to have the police doing their work.
Well, prevent the EFF from closing down their businesses.
Burning down the businesses.
Well, I've seen the EFF members actually going into stores and wrecking them.
They lost the case.
The relief they asked from the High Court was a court order telling the police to do their work, to do police work.
And they lost the case.
They
lost the case with costs. So the police is not doing their work, and that's why people are taking the law into their own hands more and more. And even the courts are not willing to make orders to force the police, to compel the police to do their work. So the police is not doing their work, and this leads to a lot of subsequent problems.
Right.
And issues.
Now, I take it both of you were practicing before 1994, were you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, how has the judicial system changed in South Africa when you think back pre-1994 and you look at it today? What are the major changes that have taken place in the judicial system?
Before 1994, I could tell a client, listen, this is the facts that you have given me. The law is this and this and this. The judge or magistrate are going to decide on these facts, and according to this law, this is going to be the outcome, 90%. So you have an option to either go ahead with the trial or offer a settlement or make a tender, whatever, because there was certainty in the legal system. After 94, it started to deteriorate. Now it's in such a situation that I cannot tell a client anymore what's going to happen next week or tomorrow if you go to court. It's a 50-50. It's a toss-up. It's a toss-up of a coin.
A senior advocate once told a client of mine, you know, the High Court in Pretoria is the biggest gambling house in South Africa.
Wow. You know, it is quite extraordinary when I hear what is actually happening in South Africa, you know, and it's in every aspect. Now let's get back to the Coffin case, because I think that's something we need to really focus on here. Now, okay, so they took this video, and for 2 months nothing happened. No one went to the police. The victor was, I guess he was doing what he does, but he hadn't bothered them after that. And then the video leaked out on the internet and went viral. What happened then?
A photograph from the video got published in Pony newspaper, the Sun.
The Sun,
yeah. On the front page.
But at this stage, when it was published, they didn't even know in what province it happened. They said it could be either Natal, KwaZulu-Natal, or Mpumalanga, because the people spoke Zulu on the video. Both Theo and Victor Malotwa spoke Zulu. So they suspected it must be in that area. But they didn't have a clue. If you look at the video, you can't see Willem or Theo's faces, you know, and it wasn't that Malotwa came to the front and said, I'm the guy in the coffin, you know?
Yeah.
So they didn't have a clue who it was. It was just published. No, there was no evidence as where it was coming from.
But then apparently the politicians got involved, didn't they?
I don't know.
The EFF was.
They were present at the bail application.
The EFF, yeah.
The EFF.
And the ANC.
Victor Malotwa testified they pushed him to lay a charge, but I don't know at what stage the influence on Victor Malotwa's side started. At the end, you can't believe anything Victor Malotwa testified, because the Supreme Court of Appeal said everything was contradictory. So,
And untrustworthy,
Yeah.
not trustworthy.
Okay.
but what happened on his, we don't know.
Okay.
Um,
Now, when we look at the
On-
when we look at the Coffin situation where he was pushed in the coffin, he was the
Yeah.
only person there, wasn't he? The only
What-
victim.
he was
Yeah.
the only person.
Yeah.
Now, apparently there was another person who came forward and claimed that they were there at the same time and were also beaten up. Can you tell us about that?
It was dealt in Sitoli, but it was only to strengthen the case. There was nobody involved. He was never present. He was never assaulted by these guys. They never saw him in their life.
Yeah, Willem and Theo told us that they really don't know this guy. This guy hasn't been there at the scene. They've never seen him before.
We suspected that maybe he was involved in another incident because he talked about he was assaulted by guys with a sticker on their side of the boxes on the doors, like
Police star.
It looks
badge.
almost like a police star, but it was like the neighborhood watch or somebody. But the buckies of Willem and Theo didn't have that sticker on the side. So it might be that he was assaulted and the two stories got mixed up. We could never figure out what happened there. But he wasn't involved with victim Malotwa.
And
No.
at the trial, he testified that he was there at the scene on the
That's
same
what I'm
date.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he actually
that was-
testified he was there.
That was a lie. That was a lie.
Okay,
It was false testimony.
There was a investigating officer. And Hannes de Beer also testified about her. And if you read that judgment of the bail application, which I sent you, you will, this Bahula, the investigating officer, she prescribed to all the witnesses what they should testify. She told Hannes de Beer, I will write down what I want you to say in this case. Not the truth, what I want you to say.
That was his testimony on the oath.
He testified that under oath, that he couldn't give his evidence. He had to testify what she told him to testify. And I think that more or less the same thing happened to Victor and Dalton. But you can't manipulate evidence. If you do that, some or other way, the story is going to be confused. And
But the truth will be drowned. Yeah.
yeah,
Right. So basically, what
but
you
she
had.
was affected that it's
What you had in court was a situation where false evidence was put forward. And the thing that really strikes out to me is one, that they never touched him, and two, that another person suddenly came forward and said, oh, he was there as well and beaten up as well. And we'll get to the charges that were actually laid against the two young men in a moment. But that's incredibly fabricated evidence, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was. It certainly was. And that's we were confident that we will get an acquittal because of the witnesses not supporting each other on crucial points.
Contradictory evidence.
And yes, contradictory evidence on crucial points. And on some points they were actually only single witnesses, where you would expect them to support each other. They were not doing that. So they were actually just single witnesses on certain aspects. And we were quite confident that we can at least get an acquittal on most of the charges.
Right.
And we were quite surprised when they were found guilty on all 6 charges.
Now, carry on.
Talking about fabricating evidence, you know, at the end of the case we got an independent witness
Right.
for the defense, because there was a discrepancy about the date. Our client said it happened on the 7th of September, while Dalton Sitoli and Victor Moloswa said it happened on the 17th of August. It's 3 weeks apart.
Right.
And they said it was definitely on 17 August, and we said it was definitely not on 17 August. So we got this guy from Tracker tracker is an instrument you put in your vehicle,
Right.
and it keeps record of all the places you drive, the speed you drive, when you stop, when you start the car.
Like a GPS.
It's like a GPS, but it keeps full record of that vehicle.
Yeah.
And Theo's vehicle was equipped with such an instrument. Well, all the company's vehicles from that company are equipped with it.
Right.
So we got the guy from Tracker. He doesn't know anything about the case, just to come and testify about the tracker. And he said it couldn't happen on the 17th of August, but indeed it could happen on the 7th of September, because he can see how the vehicle drive to the sillage ditch. It stopped there for 5 minutes. It drive back. He can see everything on the GPS. Then the prosecutor fabricated a document similar to the tracking document.
What?
And he presented,
Yeah. Then he confronted this witness and he said, your testimony is not trustworthy because I could fabricate, produce this document.
false document.
I could falsify a document that looks like the real thing.
You could also do it.
On my computer, and you, the witness, you could also have done that, so we cannot trust your testimony. And what's the funny part is that this was a piece of evidence given by the state advocate, the prosecutor.
He wasn't under oath.
He wasn't a witness, he wasn't under oath, he wasn't sworn in, he just gave this evidence from where he was standing.
And it was accepted.
The court accepted that evidence.
No,
And
I think the elephant in the room here is the judge. Tell us about this judge. I mean, was she completely incompetent, or you were in court with her? Could you see that she was way out of her depth?
This judge, she was an attorney, a struggling attorney, not really making any headway in practice, private practice. I think for about 2 years.
Maybe more, I don't know.
But she was going nowhere slowly. And then she got this offer of judge.
This was one of her very first cases. I think it was her first criminal case.
It was a very first criminal case, yeah.
Yeah. So I believe there's a little bit of incompetence and a lack of experience, maybe a lack of knowledge of the Criminal Procedure Act.
Yeah.
But I could see that she was also influenced by somebody outside, and we will never know what it is. Because
I think I know who it is, and I'll tell you why. I think I know.
that's
Yeah, I'll tell you why. You know that Julius Malema, or Commissioner Julius Malema, is the person who selects the judges in South Africa. He actually heads up that little committee. I've got videos of him, you know.
It's on that parliamentary committee.
Yeah.
But if you were in court, you know, she allowed the whole case to be live broadcast. I don't know if you know that.
No,
The TV,
ENCA, I think. Yeah.
the TV of all over the world were packed in the court, and they were broadcasting the whole trial.
But without sound. Yeah.
No, some were without sound, and most of it was with sound. Full TV, all time.
Now, did any of them remark that the evidence was contradictory, or did they just keep on hammering these two young white guys? Because we know how fake the mainstream media are.
No, they just reported the case. With no comment, they broadcasted. It was a live broadcast.
There was comments from the people, TV people with the microphones.
They were shocked about the video, I remember, but that's not what I want to say. So somebody was watching these videos elsewhere.
Right.
And then the judge's clerk will come in and tell her there's an important phone call she has to take. And then she excused everybody
She would adjourn the court
to take that call.
for, say, half an hour.
And when she returned, you can see the change of attitude, the hostility, the coldness that came over her. And it must be that somebody told her something every time on the phone. I don't...
Sometimes she said she would adjourn the court for 15 minutes, then an hour and a half later, we were only reached out because that phone call apparently took way longer than 15 minutes.
Or it was followed up with more calls. What?
Human Rights Commission was it also?
Yeah, Wessel just remind me. The Human Rights Commission sent a advocate to attend the whole case from the beginning to the end to monitor if victim or lots was human rights were affected. Then they
infringed, yeah.
Yeah.
You will never see the Human Rights Commission having a representative at court cases of farm murderers, where there's farm murderers involved. But in this instance, where there were no wounds, no blood, no nothing, they have a representative from the Human Rights Commission right from the day one.
Well, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that if you're a minority group in South Africa, you have a huge target on your back when you go into a court. And it's a lottery. You know, you talked about the High Court being a lottery. I think the lottery is what judge do you get. If you get the wrong judge, you're cactus. You take Vicky Momberg and Penny Sparrow, and there's so many other people we can talk about. You know, it is a complete lottery. There's no justice.
Yeah, that is quite frightening for a member of a minority group or minority tribe.
They are good judges, I must say.
Yeah.
They're not all like that.
It's like the police force. They are good police, but the trouble is you just need a couple of bad eggs and it ruins it for everybody, because that just affects the entire system.
I would beg to differ from you on that point. I think 80% of the police are completely corrupt. There are parts of syndicates, there are
80%.
Parts of, but there's very few incorrigible, straight, honest policemen. It's quite.
I must tell you, in Isaac van Zylk's case, you know that application I brought for his medical reports?
Yes.
We had the most fantastic judge.
Yeah.
You know, we phoned him 3 o'clock that afternoon and told him we're coming with this urgent application. He said, sure, he will wait. And he waited until 9 o'clock that evening in his office. And we said, okay, we didn't manage to get the document signed. There was a problem with Isaac's daughter signing the affidavit and everything. And he said, no, I'll be there tomorrow morning. You know, he called me 5 o'clock the next morning and asked me if we're ready. He called me 7 o'clock the morning and said, are you now ready? And at the end I rushed to the court at 9 o'clock and he gave me the order.
Wow.
It was really fantastic.
Well, I'll just give people a bit of background to that, because I know the Isaac story. Let me just give a bit of background to this. What actually happened was that Isaac van Zyl had several heart attacks, and the public hospital at Steve Biko had basically said, we haven't got a bed for you and we can't help you. That was the basic response he had given. And we actually had a live stream here on the Loving Life channel, and after that live stream a huge amount of money was donated, which allowed him to go to a private hospital. Because he had been to a public hospital before, he had had all these heart tests done, and the private hospital said, look, if we're going to do those tests, it's going to cost you something like 100,000 rand, because it's expensive.
Well, apart from that, they couldn't repeat the test because he was too weak. He couldn't go through the tests once again.
Yeah. And so anyway, what happened was that the doctors from the private hospital went to Steve Biko to try and get the tests that they needed, so they didn't have to do them again. And Steve Biko Hospital refused to release them to his doctors at the private hospital. And they tried over a couple of days, and they just said, no, we're not going to hand them over. In other words, they were holding him basically as a hostage. He couldn't have the operation. And that's where you guys came in, and you actually went to the court to actually force the hospital to release those those records, which even then they refused to release until a doctor from the private hospital went across to Steve Biko, to a doctor he knew at Steve Biko Hospital, and was able to get the records. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy.
Elsevier had a very fiery telephonic conversation that Friday afternoon.
I got it from the doctor, but by then he got it in another way as well.
Yeah.
But the Steve Biko Hospital administration were holding Isaac van Zyl's life hostage by refusing to release those records.
Can you believe that they play around with someone's life in this way? Because Van Zyl, Isak, could have died any day. He was actually having a heart attack while this doctor, the second doctor, the doctor that's doing the operation on him, was busy with him. He got a heart attack right in his office.
Okay, but I don't want to get on a sidetrack now, but what I want to say is that judge immediately see what was going on, and he had empathy with Isaac, and he was willing to help us right through the night to get that order.
So what you're saying is there are some good judges out there, but again, it's a lottery. Yeah. Now let's get back to the Coffin case.
You can guess the race of that. This last one.
I don't. You don't have to tell me. Okay. Now, let's get back to the Coffin case, shall we? Okay. So the fabricated racism of the case by the prosecutor. Can you tell us about that? How they brought racism into the whole thing, and the investigating officer, and even the judge. This whole thing became a racist issue, didn't it?
Well, the prosecutor tried very hard to bring in the K word.
The dreaded K word.
But these guys, they are working on the farm with blacks every day. And they are part of the black community because that's their colleagues.
Right.
They speak Zulu. They are loved by their colleagues.
Yeah.
They didn't have a racial problem. They had a thief problem. So they don't use the K word. They call their colleagues by their names. They are eating together, they eat lunch together, they take a tea break together, they are friends. So they didn't have a racial problem, and they didn't use the K word. And neither Dalton nor Victor could say when did they use the K word. But the prosecutor tried to force them the whole time to say, you use the K word, you use the K word, you use the K word. The investigating officer testified under oath in the first bail application that the K word was one of the big reasons why they couldn't get bail. Under oath. And there was no witness to support that evidence.
During the High Court trial, there was no charge of criminal injuria for using the K word by any of the two accused, Theo or Willem. So that whole pomp and show, that whole window dressing about a white man using the dreaded K word was all just for political
and for the media.
For the media and to create some atmosphere, because there wasn't even a charge against them for using that word.
In the black culture, they see deaf and dead persons different from our culture. It's more primitive.
And funerals.
Well, they've talked to their ancestors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And everything. A coffin is not to them what a coffin is to us. A coffin is to us a wooden box,
Yeah.
But for them, it's much deeper than that.
Yeah, much more.
And that shocked the judge because she came from that same culture. The prosecutor came from that same culture, and they hated the whites, that they take this thing that is sacred to them and make a joke about it. So that also influenced the case. I even picked it up in the Supreme Court of Appeal. where the one judge said, but you know, it's a very serious thing to a black person to do something like that. But that's why it worked. You know, if you put him in a bucket, it wouldn't have the same effect. Because it's a coffin, they got scared, and that's why it worked.
Now, was the evidence brought up that, you know, this fellow Victor had threatened to attack their families and burn down their houses and burn down their crops? Was that raised in court?
Yeah.
And what did the judge say about that?
She didn't believe that.
She said it's nonsense.
Are you joking? But she believed everything that they said.
Yeah.
No, she said there was some contradictions, but it's not on serious points. Overall, she believed that.
Okay,
And
so
remember, the Supreme Court of Appeal rejected her whole judgment, the findings as well as the sentencing was rejected completely in total.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court of Appeal in the end agreed with us, because we also said that was just BS.
The sad story is these guys were convicted on their own evidence.
Well, not on their own evidence, on their own admissions that were made when they were with the previous attorney.
Yeah, they confessed.
He advised them to make a confession and do some pointings out of the scene and where everything happened, and to put themselves on the scene of this incident, of the crime.
That was the only evidence that the Supreme Court of Appeal accepted, and they found them guilty
on that admissions. They made that admissions within the first 3 weeks after they were arrested.
Yeah.
wow.
Unfortunately, I only got involved 5 months later, and then it was already too late.
The police would never succeeded in investigating the case, found these guys, and got evidence to found them guilty. So if they didn't went to the police and say, here we are the guys, they wouldn't have been found guilty and sentenced.
Yeah.
And in your view, the judge was clearly racist in the way that she dealt with the case?
She tried to be objective.
She was clearly biased. Yeah.
Well, later on, in the beginning, I think she tried really to be fair, but the matter changed nearer to the end of the case. Her mood changed. I don't know why.
Yeah, she's got an attitude change, yeah.
I think she was very much influenced by somebody.
Yeah, well, I think I know who it was. Yeah, I come back to what's happening with clicks and.
I must just mention one thing. This judge, her grandfather, was some big icon, big bloke in the so-called struggle period of the ANC.
Okay.
She's his. It was a grandfather, so she had some contacts very high up in the government as well. And I couldn't help during that 2 weeks in court with that trial to get the impression that she was being influenced by someone, a judge, another judge, more senior judge, or a politician outside of court. That was a very strong impression that you get when you sit there for 2 weeks during this case.
Yeah. Well, you can see how they deal with the so-called victims and the people who are actually facing trial.
Yeah.
The Criminal Procedure Act in South Africa states that you can't suspend a sentence for longer than 5 years. And she gave a suspension of 8 years. Now, if you're a second-year law student, you know that the maximum suspension period is 5 years. How
Did
can
that
it
stick?
No.
Then the media started.
That was part of the problem why a judgment was
rejected because
seriously flawed in any case. Yeah.
Well, what happened then is the media started writing about this funny judgment. And then 2 weeks later she called us back to court and she sentenced them again. Now,
But then she only...
Isn't that double jeopardy?
No, she suspended the sentences from 8 to 5 years.
She changed it from 8 to 5.
She changed it to 5 years, yeah.
Well, there's a term in the law called functus officio, which means if you have done your job, it's done. You can't redo it. It's not double jeopardy, but you can't do that. It's not allowed.
If you made a decision, then you cannot make the decision again. Once it's made, you functus officio.
She did.
What is done, yeah.
She did. Now let's get into the actual proceedings as they happen in South Africa today. We have touched on this, but I just want to go and unpack this a bit more, especially when it comes to the Coffin fellows. These 2 young white guys. You say they were put in jail during and not allowed out on bail because of the K word. Is that correct?
That is part of it, and the magistrate said for their own safety. You know, there was a lot of protesters outside court, and he said it's safer for them inside prison than outside because those people are going to hurt them. Scott, the funny part is when we got them out on the 14th of July, the same protesters were there, and the same magistrate said, no, it's okay, they can go out on bail now. But me and the advocate were locked into the cells for our safety and kept there for 2.5 hours.
The advocate made this dry, humorous remark. He said, it doesn't know, there's something wrong with the legal system now because the 2 accused are out, they are going home, but the legal team is now locked up in cells.
Now, talking about the actual the court cases, the delayed proceedings, long intervals, starting late, disruption of court proceedings, etc., etc. This was basically right through the trial, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there was also some more serious things that the first time I've ever experienced it in my career of 33 years, and that was the violence and the violent attitude of the protesters from 8 o'clock in the morning. When the legal team arrived there, we were pushed physically by hand. We were pushed. We were spit on. They spit at us, and
sweared us. They called us names. Oh, terrible!
A lot of swearing at us, as if we were Stalin, KGB, or Nazis from Hitler's party, and we were only the legal team.
You know,
we were manhandled.
The disruptions came from inside the court as well as outside the court. Inside the court, there was a very emotional spectator by name of Victor Malotswa's mother. So when Victor Malotswa is testifying, and especially under cross-examination, and the advocates work him into a corner, you know, and you can see, okay, now he has a problem.
Yeah.
Then she burst out
in tears,
and she wants to faint, and it's this whole show in court. And then the judge said, okay, just give her a break, and the court adjourns.
I can see it's too emotional for the mother. We're going to adjourn the court for 20 minutes.
And then the prosecutor have time to advise Victor Malotswa, speak to him, and etc. And when the court starts again, you know, he has the answers. So it was.
Now, you had problems. You had problems right through this whole trial. You had problems with the application for the leave to appeal. What happened there? Hey,
we haven't even spoken about the court interpreter. That was a nightmare on its
Tell us about the
own.
court interpreter.
He doesn't know what interpreting means. He doesn't want to translate. He changed the evidence so it fits the case.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now the problem is our clients are fluent in Zulu, so they can understand his whole translation. And when he fixed the evidence and translate wrong, then they got frustrated because they know he's changing the evidence to suit the case. Especially between Dalton Sitole and Victor Malotswa, these stories differed. You can understand that because they weren't on the same scene.
Yeah, yeah.
Now there's small questions like, was he on top of the bakkie or behind the bakkie? Was he in front of the bakkie or
At the side.
or was he in the road, or that small silly questions that you ask. So that fine detail was never consulted between them. So when the cross-examination started, they didn't have the exact answers on all those funny questions. But the interpreter know what the answer is because he interpreted
The previous
witness.
Yeah.
So he fixed the answers the whole time. And the judge knew what he was doing because she can understand it.
Yeah.
So
The
she
prosecutor-
knew that the evidence has been tampered with through the translation.
No, but you leave it. A few times when it was too rough, she said, you must translate correctly. But most of the time she left it. The prosecutor could hear what was happening. But because our legal team is white, they thought, okay, we don't know, so they let it go. But the clients could understand Zulu. And when they tried to point it out to us, the judge reprimanded him and said, it's not your time now to testify. Keep quiet,
Yeah. Don't make gestures in court. Don't stop gesturing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move on to the application for the leave to appeal. What problems did you have there?
Well, that's another nightmare.
Okay, the time period is 30 days
After conviction.
after convictions and sentencing, which is 30 normal days. It's not 30 working days. It's a perfect month, 30 days.
Right.
So we had to transcribe the judgment in that 30 days and get it signed by the judge because that document must go to the Supreme Court of Appeal. So I paid an extra penalty fee to get it typed extra urgent. I think they charged me 15 Rand per page and it's double spacing, It's very expensive.
So it's not much on a page.
No.
No, it's not much on the page.
So I got it typed, I got it delivered to the registrar, and then the registrar just told me, but the judge haven't signed it. I went to court every second day, asking for it, begging for it. And she said, you can't force the judge to sign it. It's on her desk, but she does not sign it.
Yeah, she delays in signing it. What about the 10s and 20s and 30s of telephone calls we make?
Yeah, and then at the end, 2 days before the document must be in Bloemfontein, then I go to court and I say, okay, I'll sleep in this court tonight. You won't let me go out of this court. I sleep here until I have that judgment. And then they call this person and call a judge and call the judge president and try to organize it and say, okay, tomorrow morning you can come and fetch it. And then on the very last day, I get the judgment, but it's too late to get it in Bloemfontein in time. But I had a very nice attorney that assisted me in Bloemfontein, and they had a good relationship with the registrar at the Supreme Court of Appeal, and they accepted an emailed version, and then I sent the original by courier the next day, and they were willing to accept it like that. But it looks as if the matter was delayed to cause us to run out of time, so we can't apply to the Supreme Court of Appeal
So she's
Again.
trying every trick in the book.
But even the officials, you know, even the personnel of the registrar was obstructive and very unhelpful and
Well, they say they can't tell a judge how to do their job, which is the truth. But on the very last day, they managed to get it. If I say I'm sleeping in court, then I can do something, you know. So you have to go to extremes to get reaction. Yeah.
Crazy. Now, all this time, these two young guys, Willem and Theo, were locked up in jail.
Yep.
They were out during the trial. They came out on the 14th of July, just before the trial.
Yeah.
But after they were sentenced, they started serving their sentence. And she refused bail pending the appeal. Yeah.
Right. Now just on the jail, what was the jail situation like? Were they both kept in one cell, just the two of them, or were there other people in the cell? What was the situation in the jail?
There's about 24 people in the cell, and they were kept separate from each other. But they had a very good relationship with their co-inmates. They were respected by the co-inmates. They fit in because they could speak Zulu with it once again.
Which
and they are not
today.
racist. They are not racist, so they fit in easily.
Yeah.
They had a little bit of problem with the officials, especially Willem had an ugly incident, which I dealt with, but it was solved at the end. But he was sexually harassed by molested by a woman captain.
What, a police captain?
No, a prison captain. Correctional
captain. You're
correctional
joking.
service.
Yeah, she used her position and rank. Okay, I'll soften it up a bit. To have some of her subordinates strip Willem,
And play with his
completely naked, laughing at him, and do a body search on him, body cavity search on him, which was all completely illegal, and she made quite a spectacle, enjoyable spectacle for her out of the whole thing.
She told the people to touch him in a certain manner, and it was very ugly, very ugly.
That's disgusting. Now, have you guys heard of slow puncture?
Yes.
I mean, this happens in South African prisons. Willie Jordan has actually represented a young white fellow who was apprehended by police, put in a cell, and then they brought in something like 20 Africans, and the whole night this guy was raped by with all the Africans. And this is
clients now.
Sorry?
He's one of our clients now. We are acting on his behalf now.
So what's happening there? Is he going to get a big payout?
He asked another attorney to claim from the police.
Institute action now.
Yeah, and they delayed the matter and the claim prescribed. But he was once again involved in a similar accident, and we are putting in a civil claim now.
We are involved in that matter, and this new matter will not prescribe.
Yeah, and we assist him in the criminal case as well. Yeah.
But has he now got HIV/AIDS as a result of what happened that day?
No.
Yeah. Fortunately not.
No, it's fine.
Ah.
But he has a very serious head injury because of the second incident. He was in ICU for 10 days, and his concentration and his memory is not back to normal yet.
Yeah.
He's 63 years old, you know, recovery is difficult. Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to the situation with Willem and Theo. So here they are stuck in this jail. They're being treated well by the other inmates, but the problem is the actual staff at the jail who are just doing the wrong thing.
You won't believe me, but I will swear on the Bible, and you can get my file, my lawyer's file, and go through it. All the letters we have written to Department of Correctional Services, none of them, none, were responded or answered. None. Over a 2.5 year period.
Wow.
None. The last letter, I insulted Correctional Services, Department of Correctional Services, the prison services, and their minister, and their commissioner, and the head of prison. No reaction still. No response.
Do you think they even read the letters?
They do, because the letter I wrote about Willem's incident.
Well, that got a
There was
but they didn't respond to us.
They didn't respond to us, but there was a disciplinary hearing, and that captain was sent to another prison.
Oh, so she wasn't demoted, she was just transferred, like they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a typical ANC move, isn't it? Now, okay, let's move on. You had several applications for bail prior to trial and pending appeal. Tell us about those, and obviously after sentencing. Was this because of the chaos going in the court under the judge?
The first one was refused by a magistrate because of the chaos and a lot of lies of the investigator.
And that was the one before, long before the trial, yeah.
Yeah, it was before we were on record. It was 2 weeks after they were arrested in 2016. That was because of the lies of the investigating officer, because of the political emotion outside the court. That one was denied. Then we brought a second application in July. That was 6 months later, before the same magistrate, and he gave them bail. But it was only for a short period until they were sentenced again in October. Then they had to return to court. We applied for bail pending
our application for appeal to the Bloemfontein Supreme Court of Appeal, yeah. And that was also refused.
Wow.
She said there was no prospect of another judgment by another court.
No prospect of success before another judge. Yeah. And in the end, she was proved wrong on that issue as well, because another court and another judge,
5 judges.
that found completely the opposite that she did.
No, all 5 judges agree with the judgment, so 5 judges.
Now
found.
for a wrongful arrest or wrongful imprisonment, don't you get compensation? Wouldn't Willem and Theo be getting compensation for? I just want to go through the charges that the judge made against them. I'm just looking it up here. Where are we? Because there were a bunch of charges, weren't there? Here we are. Okay, so they were found guilty of assault to cause grievous bodily harm to Denton Sitoli, a friend of Victor, who claimed that he was also assaulted at that time, even though he wasn't there. That's that second person we're talking about. And then there was the conviction, assault to cause grievous bodily harm on Victor Malochwe by hitting him and assaulting him. That's with that knobkerrie, which never happened.
Yes.
And then you got kidnapping.
That huge knobkerrie would fail to make any, to cause any damage.
Yeah, anyway, let's continue. We've got kidnapping, taking him to the silage ditch close by. That's kidnapping. Attempted murder by putting him in the coffin with a snake or with an intention to burn them in the coffin. Now, was there ever a snake involved?
No.
No.
So this is just another porcupine.
Yeah, it was just
It was to scare him. They wanted to scare him. He wasn't scared enough.
Look,
Okay, but the charges continue. We'll just go through all these charges, then we'll have a look at them. Then there's intimidation by threatening Victor with the police. That's intimidation. Well, I mean, if he's stealing, how can that be intimidation? He should go to the police. He should be charged. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's continue. Then you got defeating the ends of justice by burning the coffin. And
Yeah.
then they were sentenced to, and this is where it gets absolutely ridiculous. On the 27th of October 2017, the two men were sentenced for assault against Sitoli for 3 years, even though he was never there. Assault against, this is grievous bodily harm against Victor Malochwa for 3 years, even though they never put a finger on him. Kidnapping for 5 years. Attempted murder for 7 years, even though there was never an attempt to murder him. Intimidation, 6 years, because they said we're going to take you to the police station. Defeating the ends of justice, 3 years, and that was only for Theo Jackson because he burnt the coffin. So
Yeah.
the total there is 24 and 27 years. But because because some of the sentences had to run concurrently and a part was suspended, they had to serve 11 and 14 years. And that's 11 years behind bars and 14 years behind bars. Now, when you heard this judgment, what was your reaction?
I was, shocked, flabbergasted. You know, when I heard the 24 years and 27 years,
I was heartbroken.
I was
because
horrified. I couldn't believe my ears. It was
you must know by then,
earth-shattering.
these two guys felt like my own sons.
Yeah.
You know, I emotionally supported them and their families throughout this case. And I became so close to them that it felt as if they were sending my own children to prison. It was terrible.
Yeah, and as I viewed the case as trying to scare someone, putting him in a coffin, trying to frighten him, and that led to 24 and 27 years imprisonment was so outrageous and shocking. I just couldn't comprehend this kind of sentencing for something that was virtually, in my view, innocuous. I wouldn't be scared if someone put me in a coffin, even if they can get me inside a coffin, because I'm a big bloke. But to sentence the perpetrator to 27 years and 24 years, it's mind-boggling.
It is
And-
It was
absolutely.
mind-boggling for me.
And to face your clients and try to explain to them how it happened. You know what do we tell them? We're sorry.
I told them, look guys, this is shocking. It's a shock to all of us, but don't worry, we will clear everything up on appeal. We will slam dunk this appeal. There's no problem, we will have no problems on appeal. And then we applied for leave to appeal, and she said, no.
Wow. Now,
So what do you tell your clients then?
well, I was
Now
about to
the-
say, what was the emotional state of Theo and Willem at this time? It must have been horrifying for them.
They were also shocked, but they were very strong. And they, you know, I must tell you, they never stopped believing in us.
Yeah.
They trusted us so much that we will fix it. They were, you know.
Look, Elsaby and I discussed this matter on a daily and even nightly basis, every day for 2 years. So we were so involved in this matter that it was in front of our minds and on our minds every day. There was not a day that you could forget about this case.
Yeah. Wow. Now,
They-
obviously,
They
Ob-
trusted us that we would fix it.
obviously,
And-
all these appearances in court and these appeals and the actual trial, it must have cost an absolute fortune. Where did these two young guys come up with the money to actually cover their costs?
Well, you're talking about $1 million here, 1 million rand.
Wow.
They They didn't have the money.
They don't have the money.
So how did they pay, or what happened? I mean, did you guys just do a pro bono?
I'll get the pay from them in future.
we did it without pay, and Patriot for Minorities collected money
For the expenses.
from the public and to pay the advocate and his expenses. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, the expenses.
And the correspondent attorney in Bloemfontein with the
and
Supreme
the
Court.
courier and the printing costs, and that's all the expenses were covered by donations, and we're very, very, very thankful for those people, because without those donations we could not have done it.
And for Patriot for Minorities, because without them, these people would still be indebted, and I would have to pay the attorneys, corresponding attorneys in Bloemfontein out of my own pocket.
Yeah.
And I probably will have paid the advocate as well out of my own pocket. But we, Elsie and I didn't get any direct payment for legal fees. No.
Right.
Because there wasn't it.
We'll get
We're
to
broke now.
Yeah, we'll get to Patriot for Minorities in a moment. Now, let's just go back to this, the involvement of politics in the judicial system. I mean, to me, clearly, there's political influence being brought to bear on these judges who are incompetent, and they're being directed from the outside as to, how to charge a case. Do you feel the same way, Marius? As someone who's right there on the coalface, who's got court cases coming up all the time, can you see or feel where you feel there's political interference happening behind the judge's back, or the judge has been told what to say and what to do?
I mean, in high-profile cases where there are a lot of emotions and politics involved, there you can pick up rather quickly whether they are outside influence, and you get it from the demeanor of the presiding judge or presiding magistrate. Most other cases, it's not an issue. It's only in a couple of high-profile cases where I picked it up.
We worked for 6 years on the case of Clive Darby Lewis, and that was a good preparation for what was coming on the Coffin case, because there were also a lot of politics involved, and we saw what politics could do in a case like that.
Yeah, but it's getting worse and worse, isn't it?
Yeah, it's getting worse. If I can speak from that 33 years experience in the legal practice, I would say it's getting worse.
Yeah.
It's getting frightening worse.
You know what they intend to do? They're trying to frustrate the legal team in such a manner that we say we can't proceed with it any longer because of the frustrations. And then those guys are without legal representation, and then they can sit in prison for the rest of their lives. That's the whole purpose behind it. So they try to frustrate us to give up the fight.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work with me. I'm getting cross, and I get worse if you frustrate me.
Well, for someone who's going to spend the night in a courtroom to make sure that you get the documents, I can see that you're determined.
Well, it was worse in the police cells, I must tell you. The first time I was locked up, and it was terrible.
Wow. Now, tell me about Patriot for Minorities. What is the organization all about, and how does it fit in with your legal firm?
It's a Patriot for Minorities is a civil rights organization, an NPC, a non-profit company. And we specifically, if I say we, it's because I became also a director on the board of directors of Patriot for Minorities. We specifically act in the interest of minority groups, minority tribes, minority nations in South Africa. There are black minorities, and there are colored or brown minorities, there are the white minority. So there are several minority groups inside of South Africa, and the constitution of South Africa is written in such a way that there are no provision for protection of minority rights, only individual rights. So no one is acting for minorities, and their culture and their language and their heritage are being
trampled on.
Well, yeah, caved away, eaten away by the majority decisions. Everything in South Africa is made by majority decision, and that's called democracy.
Right.
In the process, minority rights are walked all over and trampled on.
And for a single person to stand up for his rights, it's impossible. As a group, you have a better chance. So what Patriot for Minorities is trying to do is to form a group to support the single person that can push his rights, test it in front of the Human Rights Commission, test it in front of the Public Protector. And courts, wherever you can fix a problem. But you can't do it on your own, you can't afford it, you don't have the knowledge, and you don't have the support. If you're not part of Patriot for Minorities, an organization that supports you, you can't do it on your own.
Currently, we are working together with another organization from the Brown community in Easters, also in the district of Victoria, and we are putting our resources together. So we are actually already working together with other minorities, and we're trying to get more minorities into this movement.
Wessel is our activist. He likes protesting and form groups to go and to the US Embassy and
yeah, but I must admit immediately that I'm always part of that kind of action.
We go along, but he's the guy that organised that marches.
So how do people join Patriots for Minorities?
Well, we ask for a membership fee, which is 100 Rand a month, but that goes into the fund, which sponsors cases like this Coffin case, and help with the funding of it.
Now, just on that particular point, do you have like a Facebook page, or do you have a website?
We have a Facebook page. The website is not very active at this point, but it will...
Our contact details is on the website, so it's www.patriotsa.org.
Okay, so it's www.patriotsa.org.
Yes.
That's your website, okay. Cool.
And the Facebook page is Patriot for Minorities. Patriot for Minorities.
Now, 100 Rand is about $7 US. So Living Soul said, how much is 100 Rand in euro? That would be probably about €4 a month, Living Soul. Okay, sorry, back to you guys.
There's also, for the people in South Africa, there's a 5-digit number, like an SMS. And an administrative person will call them back to complete their forms. The 5-digit number is
45770.
45770. So they just call that number.
Put your name in SMS.
Your name and your SMS that number.
Yeah, and they will call you.
Okay. Now, the other thing I want to talk about with this Patriots for Minorities, there are so many minority groups or people in the minority group who are now being charged and facing court, and they don't have the cash to actually get legal advice, and that's a killer. I mean, then you're fair game. What I believe happens with your organization is that if someone is a member of Patriot for Minorities, that basically, it's like an insurance policy. You come in and you represent them. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
The advice, the immediate advice is very crucial. You would have realized that the Coffin case got the wrong advice to go and confess, you know. So it's very important that you get somebody with experience, with knowledge in the first 24 hours to do the right thing, because a mistake at that stage can ruin the whole case, you know.
Right.
Like in the Coffin case.
But it's not all criminal matters, you know, there's civil matters as well, problems with your neighbors and motor accidents and stuff like that. You know, people don't know their rights and they need somebody that can give them advice. And we are working on a whole panel of lawyers that's going to work with us and advise people.
Fantastic. Are some of those retired lawyers or people who just doing this as a... Yeah.
Mostly people in practice, but we know the guys. We worked with them for over 30 years.
Right.
And they have all have a specialty in a certain area.
Field, yeah.
Right.
So you don't send a criminal case to a conveyancer. You know, it's horses for courses, and we know where to go, who to call, and who can assist.
Right.
The first one to retire will probably be myself. I think I'm the closest to the retirement age of the whole panel.
Well, I always call myself the old fart.
Yeah, I'm getting that. I'm getting close to that number or age where they
I'm
call
retired. I'm retired.
me a grumpy old man.
I must tell you, after a lifetime in the law and what we've done and what we've seen, Marius's experience is worth his weight in gold.
Fantastic. Now, you currently...
I've got a lot of weight, so that's a lot of gold.
Now, you're currently busy with another case, aren't you, of Flippy van Dijk from Umkomaas. What's that all about?
That's the guy with the head injury, which I talked about.
Ah, right, okay.
But maybe we must discuss it on another evening. It's a very long story, but it was attacked farm by 20 policemen.
Masked policemen.
And they swept the area. There was no bullet casings, no tracks.
Afterwards, yeah.
Afterwards, there was no evidence that the police were there. If he died in intensive care, it would have looked like a farm
murder, yeah.
Farm attack, and nobody would have known it was the police.
Yeah.
Wow. And that happened in Umkomaas.
Umkomaas.
Yeah.
That's in KwaZulu-Natal, isn't it?
KwaZulu-Natal, yeah.
Wow.
The problem is that he's got a piece of land there on which he does farming, and someone else, we'll talk about that later, wants that farm, and they want him and his wife off of the land.
Okay,
That matter goes on trial later this month.
Okay, now, so if I can just make an observation, here you've got a case where you've got 20 police with sticks beat this guy to a pulp.
No,
because hang on, let me just finish. They beat him to the pulp because they want the land that he's on. Okay?
No, the station commander's cousin wanted that.
Well, somebody in the know wants that bit of land. And now you've got the other case where you've got these two young white guys who try and intimidate this fellow and let him go without touching him, and they've faced 24 and 27 years behind bars for doing that, and these 20 cops, nothing's happened to them.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, but I mean,
but we're busy.
but
we're busy.
Again, it depends who your judge is, doesn't it?
Now we trace them.
Mhm.
We know who they are. We know the vehicle's registration numbers. We even know in which hotels they booked in that night. So the investigation is making progress. They're
Well,
going
that's
to pay
good.
for it.
Well, that'll be a very interesting one to follow in the future. All right.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm just going to just talk to the side chat quickly. Guys, has that painting sold yet? we got this painting, absolutely beautiful painting. It would look fantastic in your offices. Actually, it's when you look at this video later, you can have a look at it. One of our moderators on the on the side chat, Erica, painted this. She's a fantastic artist, and one of her paintings actually landed up in Parliament. That's how good she is. And that was
Wow.
that was of the Voortrekker monument. This painting is of a wave, and it just captures it so beautifully. But we've got a. I don't think we have any bids on it yet. And as I said, the money is going to charity. People are so short of cash nowadays because of this lockdown. It's so sad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
We're all broke.
Yeah. Everybody is broke. Well, I guess in conclusion, when it comes to this Coffin case, what we've seen tonight is that there is a huge problem with the judicial system in South Africa today. And, you know, it's not just judges who don't judge something on the merits of the case. They have their own biases which come into the actual judgment. There are a whole lot of issues related to this. And is there anything that you'd like to say, Marius, as someone who's been in the law for so long? Is there any advice you would give to people in South Africa when it comes to maybe they've been arrested for not wearing a face mask or something like that, and they've got to appear in court? What's the best advice you can give people?
Make no admissions. Make no admissions to the police. Get good legal advice from an experienced lawyer. Make no admissions. Don't speak to the police or any other. You only speak to your lawyer. Get good advice. Make no admissions. And yeah.
Stay out of trouble.
And enlist. Be a member. Get a membership from Patriot for Minorities.
Yeah, because if you join Patriot for Minorities and you become a member, you can then go to your panel of lawyers and get support.
Yeah.
Is that pro bono?
The initial advice is pro bono.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Some cases we do sponsor where it's very serious, like Flippy's case we sponsor, but we can't sponsor all the cases. But we can give you a good startup, refer you to the correct lawyer, and then you can negotiate a fee with the guy.
Well, if you get a lot of membership, then we can sponsor more cases.
Yeah. But yeah, it also depends on the seriousness of the case. You know, if it's a divorce matter, for instance,
Yeah.
It's not your minority rights that are attacked. It's a family matter, you know.
Yeah,
Right.
And we can refer you to the correct person. We can give you the initial advice, but that's a private matter, you know. Like Flippy's case is a highly sensitive matter. There's a lot of politics involved.
It's a serious matter, yeah.
And it's a serious matter, so that's why we decided to support him longer than the initial phase.
Right. Right. Okay. I'm just going to once again address the side chat. Guys, I'm going to be shutting down the auction in the next few minutes, so if someone seriously wants to buy this beautiful painting, you better get your bid in quickly, because we're going to shut the auction down very shortly. Now, what I'd like you guys to do is to just like make a closing statement to the viewers who are watching now. We've got about 200 people watching right now, and if you each want to just make a closing statement to people about anything that comes into your head or into your heart, just I'll hand over to you. I'll start off with Elsaby.
You know, sometimes something crosses your road and you have to deal with it. You don't have to go and look for a place where you can assist, but something happens in your life, bring people into your life, and then you must deal with that because it's put in your life to dealt with. And if everybody deals with everything that's on their road, the life will be, the world will be a better place, I believe.
Right. Okay. And Maurice, is there something you'd like to say?
I can say a lot of things, but I will stick with this. Don't give up hope, and get in contact with the right people, and keep on chucking along.
Right. Right, fantastic. Okay, guys, look, I'm going to start wrapping up the live stream now. I just want to say thank you so much to Marius and Elsa B for joining us, and please, if you feel so inclined, join Patriot for Minorities. Remember their webpage. Can we just repeat the webpage, Elsa B?
It's www.patriotsa for South Africa, sa.org.
So it's www.patriotsa.org, and from there they'll be able to become a member. And what's that number? That phone number? They've got a phone, Marius?
Yeah, they can go to the Facebook page.
Yeah.
There's also phone numbers there that you can contact them.
Right. Okay. And there's that 450 number, isn't there?
That's the SMS.
There's a short message SMS, number 45770.
45770.
You just SMS your name to 45770 and someone will contact you.
Okay, and then they can become a member of Patriot for Minorities.
Yes, and we can do more cases or more people.
Yeah, okay,
As
fantastic.
long as we are alive.
Alright guys, look, I'm going to wrap up the live stream now. Thank you to the moderators, you always do a fantastic job. Yeah, it's a pity about that, Jan, but I can understand. Yeah, the painting we had on auction didn't sell tonight. It's a shame, but people are so short of cash. Yeah. All right. Please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. We have live streams most nights on the Loving Life channel, and please take care, everybody, and don't forget, tomorrow night we have another live stream, and we're going to be talking about something very interesting. It's to do with new technology and how to protect your farm, your house, whatever it might be. But we're going to be covering a couple of other subjects too related to that.